an actual update on the college football season. We are a little bit different in the way that we've approached this. I think a lot of you have noticed that by now. We have not talked about COVID-19 hardly at all. We have not talked about the status of the season hardly at all. And it's not so much because we've been ignoring it. It's because there hasn't really been a whole lot new to talk about. And what we could have done is we could have led every show with this stuff, and we could have tried to build the brand of this show, which is still new under the 24/7 Sports umbrella of content. We could have tried to build the brand off of COVID-19. And to be honest, we probably could have gotten more views because it would have been of the more hot take variety in nature. But that's not what we're trying to do long term with this. And so we've only mentioned this when there's something substantive to talk about, which is why we led the show with it Thursday, and which is why we're going to lead the show with it again now, because there is something to talk about. The Big Ten, quickly, everyone knows this, I don't need to rehash this, but the Big Ten announces they're going to go conference games only. It wasn't surprising that the decision was made. It was surprising to a lot of people when the decision was made, and by a lot of people, I don't mean me, nor do I mean you, respectively, although we may be included in that. I mean conference commissioners, university presidents, TV executives, etc., etc. So the next logical question is, will others follow suit? Down in our neck of the woods, it's, will the SEC follow suit? Pac-12 followed suit already since we were on air Thursday, and so now there are rumors, and I would tend to believe it's an inevitability that most everyone will end up either totally going down this road or to a large degree going down this road. So with that in mind as the backdrop, I want to direct your attention to 247sports.com, and you'll see it there still on the front page as of like an hour ago. And that is a really good feature, really in-depth feature by Brandon Marcello today, who has done the best reporting in the industry on this entire subject, in my humble opinion. Not biased at all, but he's done a great job on it. And he's put together a list of reasons why going the conference only route, the conference game only route, it could be easily the best path to having a college football season. And so he lays out basically what we know, separates fact from fiction, gives you as much as he could possibly give you as to what he's gathered from the undercurrent and different people that he talks to. And believe me, that network is pretty darn extensive. And so you've got different formats that you could go down. Let's just, you and I together, talk through slowly why it would be so much more beneficial for people, and by people I mean conferences, to go the conference game only route. The first thing it does is obviously it gives you total autonomy on your schedule. If I am the ACC president, if I am the Big 12 commissioner, I guess, and I go conference games only, I mean, I could do everything from starting the season in late August to starting the season in early October. I could play games on Wednesdays if I want to. I can negotiate my own restructured television deal with ESPN, with Fox Sports, with CBS Sports, whatever the case may be. I don't have to match up my scheduling with yours. Hey, we previously had a game scheduled for week 7. Well, that's off the table now. So I can move this game there and that game there. And you understand how much more leeway and flexibility it gives you. You also get to decide, how are we going to structure this? Are we going to do all of your division games and then 3 crossover games and maybe try and fit in an out-of-conference game? Do we enter an agreement, maybe SEC with the ACC, since we've already got 4 permanent cross-conference rivalries anyway, to where maybe we try and add an out-of-conference there? There's a lot up in the air right now. And I know one of the popular talking points, just to kind of direct your attention maybe down a side road for a second, a popular talking point that tries to poo-poo this idea that maybe there could be an agreement between 2 conferences like the SEC and the ACC, where, hey, we get together, Greg Sankey and John Swafford, and we get together and we say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play 9 conference games apiece. We're going to work Notre Dame in there probably somehow. More on the Irish later. But we got Georgia clamoring to play Georgia Tech, and FSU and Florida are up in arms, and Clemson and South Carolina are about to march on the conference offices with torch and pitchfork in hand. Let's work something out here. Could you do that? Yes, you could, but the popular talking point to dissent against that possibility is, well, you'd have to standardize your health protocols, and to this point, no one's worked in conjunction. Both things can be true. It could be true that this has been a cluster so far and no one's really worked in conjunction. And it could also be true that everyone's just sitting around waiting for someone else to do something. So really what you could see, to me, this is a perfect situation where you could see if you really get down to it and you really need to get something done, you could see more progress over the span of 48 hours than you've seen in the past 4 months. Like, that's the way that could end up happening. You could wake up on Monday and think, there's no way they're going to get this done. And then wake up Tuesday morning and you're looking at headlines saying, SEC and ACC agree to standardize testing. They agree to this, and that. Out of conference format will feature one out of conference game, conference versus conference. All that stuff could happen, just putting it on the table. The other benefits here is you get to know what you have in your portfolio. What do you need to do? And when do you need to start? And Brandon Marcello, again, it's on the front page of 247sports.com right now. He really lays out what has to happen and what the minimum baseline is that you need to have happen. And I thought he brought up a lot of interesting dates. One in particular caught my eye because if you'll remember, back in March, I remember, Colin, it was the first show that you and I did once we had been granted emergency personnel status. So Colin and I are the only ones in the building, and that was a very notable first show for obvious reasons, and I remember it still. And so we did a segment. Now, way back then, it felt like it was, let's talk about it for fun because we'll never have to actually broach this topic again. And we just for fun said, what's the latest you could start a college football season and still have the season? And so some of you will remember this. At the time, I threw out the last Saturday in October as being the latest possible date I thought you could start a season. Now, my theory had all the conferences pushing their conference championship games a couple of weeks further into December. So Brandon Marcello's writing, and he's not just speculating or guessing here, this is feedback he's gotten from some pretty dialed in folks. He's talking about the minimum. It would be great if you could get 10 conference games in, and well, it would be great if we could play an entire season, but what's the minimum? To have a season, what's the minimum? And he's talking about maybe a format where you're playing, let's say in the SEC, just your division games. So that's a 6-game season. You need 4 weeks of camp. You probably need 2 weeks before that. So 6 weeks leading up to the start of a 6-game season could see you start as late as the last Saturday in October or thereabouts, second to last Saturday in October, somewhere around there. Keep in mind, there are 9 Saturdays in October and November this year. That's very important for you to track your paycheck too. So what could happen there? Well, obviously a number of things could happen. But also, I was talking on the BamaOnline.com message board a little while ago. You know, some people were talking about their game against Georgia that's right now scheduled in week 3, but then all of a sudden you take away the USC game in week 1, and I can't even remember off the top of my head who Bama plays in week 2, but let's say you take that one away. Well, that would lead you to believe, oh, we're going to open the season against Georgia. I don't know that that's the case because, again, as Brandon has pointed out, if you want to make sure that the status of your division titles is decided, it would be pretty smart to front load everyone's schedule as much as you could with division games. So Alabama may still play Georgia this year. I don't necessarily know that it's a foregone conclusion they would play them in week 1 just because that was going to be their first conference game. That's the point. If you go conference game only, it allows you a whole lot more leeway and flexibility. But I would just remember this. I would remember that those, as he points out, those conference championship TV deals are worth a lot of money. Those conference TV contracts, period, are worth a lot of money. The playoff is worth a lot of money. One of the other hangups that I've seen here, including on our show the other night, was how are you going to decide the playoff structure? And is having this kind of format for your regular season going to handcuff the college football playoff committee? But that's not necessarily a concern that you need to have because, again, as Brandon pointed out in this piece on 247sports.com, it is not just some rando committee that decides whether we're going to change the format of the college football playoff. Will you have a certain number of games you have to play? Will we expand and take all the conference champs from the Power 5 and a couple of auto bids, et cetera, et cetera? That's not how that works. The way it works is the 10 Power 5 or the 10, I guess you would call them FBS, conference commissioners and Notre Dame, they get to decide that. Translation, the very people deciding how they're going to run their season are the same people who get to collectively decide what the structure of the playoffs is going to be. So I think it is not really at the forefront right now to concern yourself with whether this is or isn't going to handcuff the college football playoff committee. The playoff committee will do whatever these cats tell them they're going to do. That's the way that'll work. Bill Hancock even said that to Brandon Marcello. I had to watch the video because I had to upload it just in the past couple of months. He said that. So the lasting, I guess, thing that I've said the entire time is we're sitting right here today. It is July 12th. It's July 12th. We're talking about stuff that hopefully we could get off the ground in September. We're talking about back-end stuff that would be happening in late November, early December. I cannot remember a single month's period during this entire ordeal where things have just remained the same. Sometimes it seems that they've gotten better. Sometimes it seems they've gotten a lot worse. But nothing has stayed the same, nor will it stay the same. So what we do know is things are going to change. You don't necessarily have the ability to maybe predict which way the winds are going to blow, but things are going to change. So give yourself as much flexibility on the back end as you can. Now, the hard part is that means start as soon as you can. And that, friends, is why I'm glad that I get to sit here and talk about the folks who run the conferences instead of having to run a conference right now.